Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the recent episode of Ikigai Essentials podcast. Bill Wang here, joined with my partner in crime, Oliver EK. Today's topic is we're going to talk a little bit about how it is being a parent and the stress involved with being a parent. I think it's a good time to kind of discuss this and open up this subject. My kids just started school 2 weeks ago. I think Oliver's kids just started school again. So kind of back to the routine. But since we are back in the routine, I know myself, I've been dealing with this personally, is it's a lot of stress. I think I've talked about this in several episodes as well as, I'm currently unemployed and my wife's the full-time worker at home. And my job is kind of like the full-time dad, taking care of the kids, dropping them off, picking them up from school, getting their lunch and snacks ready, helping with the homework, coordinating play dates, taking the activities, all those things, right? But throughout all of this don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but it is pretty stressful at the end of the day. One article that we came across recently is kind of, I'll read the title right now. It says, "Parenting stress is a public health problem," the Surgeon General warns. And I think that really is true. Being in the thick of it, I think I'm actually just kind of experiencing it firsthand and just finding ways to alleviate it, finding ways to deal with the stress, and just like make it a little bit more enjoyable from a day-to-day basis. And that's our hope today, is just kind of kick off this episode, talk about some examples and discussion, and just see what we can do to help each other kind of alleviate that stress that's come caused by parenting.
Yeah, so I think we wanted to talk about this today, just because, me firsthand, I totally get it. So I have three kids, 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Um, I won't get into it, obviously, because they're minors, but so I don't know who said it, but I read like this quote that was really interesting, and it said, so for those maybe of you who aren't parents, or those of you who are, the quote was, "A parent is only as happy as their saddest child," and that is like so true for me. So like I have one child who's been going through some kind of some things, and it doesn't really matter like how well the other kids are doing, even if they're which is kind of unfortunate. Like what my oldest child, he's doing great in school and everything, but if you have one child who's struggling with something, then that's your cap on how happy you are, until they can kind of break through. Like you are kind of suffering along with them. So yeah, I've been kind of dealing with that, and yeah, you look at just like the way, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because like when we were young and our parents were like complaining about things, like we'd always just say that old people complain. But now that we're the older people, is it like a legitimate complaint, or is it just like us complaining as older people? But I mean, I feel like if you just go out into the world, people are like more guarded. I think a lot of it's COVID induced, but more guarded, less patient. Hopefully, it's not like this everywhere, but just driving in LA is like so stressful. Like, yeah, I kind of don't want to live here anymore because just going anywhere, it's just, once you get there, you're like not in a good mood. Like, just the whole experience of going anywhere. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is probably, yeah, and according to the Surgeon General, it's not imagined. This is actually like a real thing that's happening. And so if you're a parent out there, just kind of know that you're not alone. Like other people are going through it. I'm going through it. And I think that's the first thing. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
have any kind of experiences that you've seen or are experiencing, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. One data point that I found quite interesting and kind of shocking is um, in 2023, the American Psychological Association survey found that almost half, 48%, of parents say that they experience completely overwhelming, stressful days. That's compared to about 26% of other adults. So 48%, that's half of, the results from the survey saying that they're stressed because of being a parent, taking care of kids, dealing with all the kid stuff and all that. And I'm part of that. One thing that I think that attributes to my stress level is the fact that I kind of feel lonely, to be honest with you. And my situation, as I explained earlier, is I'm kind of the stay-at-home dad, coordinating all these play dates, talking to all the parents, which most of the parents that I talk to are moms. In fact, I'm part of this group chat or group text with a bunch of moms. I'm like the only dad in there. And at the end of the day, it makes me feel kind of lonely. It makes me feel kind of isolated. And I think that's kind of the thing that really triggers my stress levels. Like Oliver mentioned, is yeah, you deal with these issues with your kids if there's struggles that impacts your happiness, that impacts your mental well-being, all of that. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that just yet. My daughter's 11, my son's 7. They aren't going through some of the things that Oliver stated that one of his kids is going through. But that is true, right? It's like just being lonely, being isolated, not having the community per se kind of makes me, my stress level spike. Another example that I kind of was thinking about recently is I was in Taiwan about a few weeks ago, and I was there for about 3 weeks. And I see all my cousins, I see my second cousins there. It's a little bit different culturally. I see that they have kids similar to my kids' age. They have a lot more activities than my kids do. Seems like they're busier than I am, but they don't seem as stressed. And one thing that I can kind of correlate that to, and I think the article even mentioned that a little bit, is you see the cultural difference in the US here in the States. It's like you don't really have that support system that you need. Your parents live farther away. They live in a different city. Mine live in Seattle. I know Oliver's live in Spokane. So you don't have as much family and support system to help you with the kids. And I think in Asia and other countries, there's a lot of that. That's more prevalent, right? They called it the multi-generational village model. You have your parents helping out. If your grandparents are still around, they're helping out. And I saw that firsthand with my cousins, even though her parents aren't around, my grandparents aren't around, but the aunts were helping out. Their cousins were helping out. So you see that across the board there in other countries, which I think is kind of lacking here in the US.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Something else in the article about like happiness that was really interesting was, so they compared, so the percentage was 48%,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually compared to 25% of non-parents, which I thought was interesting. So it is, I don't know what the figures are on like non-parents, but I mean it's definitely more for parents compared to non-parents. And yeah, I think a lot of it comes from, I mean, technology I think is part of it too. So like you see, I mean, the facts are like with TikTok and with social media, there's a spike in dopamine. Like every time you scroll through a video or see something that is of interest, and you can do that. Like there's no end to the internet, right? So you can kind of like watch videos forever. So I think what happens a lot with a lot of people is like if you have that at your fingertips, once you put the phone down, the world seems like extremely boring because you can't do that. So you can't flip through, if you're bored in the real world, you can't like fast forward time. You can't skip over these things. So I think young people are just, they don't have a sense of like how important boredom is and how that can kind of help like with creativity, with your mental health. Like when we were kids, like we would literally just like fit like a box or whatever. Like you would just go outside and throw rocks, like literally like throw rocks like at a fence or something like that.
Yeah.
But now it's like why would you even do that? Like you have the world at your fingertips now. Um, and then I want to kind of touch on what you said earlier, Bill, about kind of like the cultural landscape changing a little bit. So another really interesting figure was that, so they're comparing now like childcare and how much parents spend each week on childcare compared to like 1985. So it says, so the Surgeon General said that we're spending 40% more time each week on childcare compared to 1985. and fathers are now devoting 154% more time each week. So you kind of just see like how much things have changed there. But yeah, I don't know. In terms of loneliness, I mean, how do you deal with that, Bill?
You know, there's one thing that we'll touch a little bit later is, I saw there's 3 tips that kind of help you get over a lot of this or kind of help you with the stress. One thing that really stuck to me and makes a lot of sense is start with what you know. And what that really means is, you have friends that you've talked to or that you haven't talked to in a while, but just kind of rekindling those friendships. And part of that is just kind of looking at what your community you're in, what activities your kids are in, and try to meet new friends as well. Like one thing that's helped me is, for example, is I was coaching my son's basketball team a couple seasons ago, and there's actually like 2 or 3 dads that we became pretty good friends with. And every Sunday, we actually end up playing basketball every Sunday at 4 p.m. Just a bunch of middle-aged dads going out there getting some exercise, trying not to get hurt, playing some hoops. But that's really helped in terms of kind of boosting up that community, trying to eliminate that loneliness. So I think that's really helped me in terms of a tip for, kind of start with what I know, what I enjoy doing, and from there build upon and build that community and network to try to help me through these stressful times.
Yeah, and I guess like to add to that, I think uh, I think it's like okay to ask for help. I think there's like some shame in asking for help. I think as a parent, we feel like we have to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need help or like if your kids are not like thriving, then you're to blame as a parent. Um, so I think a lot of people are willing to help. Um, like I know if I was like really struggling and I like called my mom up and said, "Hey, can you not doing well? Can you help?" I know that she would like fly over and help. So and I think a lot of people would be willing to help if they knew
Mm-hmm.
you needed help. So yeah, I think having like a circle of support, yeah, even like like school, like you get like the roster for all the parents for your classroom for your kids. Just, I think it's good to be like active and kind of communicative, and be willing to help. Like if you're willing to help other people, they're going to be willing to help you.
Yep.
Like maybe even offering to help before someone asks. I think I maybe just being mindful of that. Yeah, like we have my daughter's friends. She's like she's from a single parent home, so I know that like her mom is like really stressed out. So just just like being open and saying, hey, do your daughter need a ride home, or we'll be happy to take her out for a little while for a couple hours, things like that. And then people are happy to reciprocate. So yeah, I think maybe it's like twofold, like not being afraid to ask for help, and then maybe being open and leading the way in offering to help other people.
Yep. That's a good point because the second tip here is actually kind of related to what you said, Oliver, is acknowledge the benefits of an online community. You mentioned earlier about social media, the prevalence around that. Um, Even if you are not physically able to, or you don't have the time to meet people or build that community, there's a lot of resources online that help as well. There's different forums, different, I don't know, Facebook groups or whatever with parents. All those are kind of benefiting as well. And I think I've kind of wanted to take that approach as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that particular article, but I think it may like kind of stretch even like beyond that. So when I think like online community, that doesn't sound very interesting to me, but I think like you can kind of figure out like what makes you feel good and kind of what you're drawn to. So like for me, like comedy music, I would say are like my two things that kind of always help. Like no matter how I feel, I can always, listen to comedy or listen to some music, and that always makes me feel better. So
Mhm.
even though I can't go to, I mean, it's hard to like go to like a live concert with family and everything, or go to like a live comedy show or something like that. I actually like listen to like Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, like the podcast, like not every morning, but most mornings, and it kind of puts me in a really good mood. Like, so so like just having that, being able to laugh. Yeah, I mean, I guess like kind of going beyond like the foundation of this episode, like just like being able to laugh. Like, when's the last time? I don't know how it is for you, but like, when's the last time you laughed until you like cried? I can't even remember like how long it's been. And I think you need that. You need something, anything.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it's like a friend or family member or like a partner or someone who can do that for you. But if not, I think you gotta like search those things out. So
True.
I think the hardest I laugh is when I'm listening to that podcast versus like real life. So when you talk about like online community, I think maybe that works too. Like when you, because I'm listening to this podcast that's kind of online and I wouldn't have access to it in person, but yeah, it really helps.
True. True. And that kind of leads to the third tip here is, just take time for yourself. As you mentioned, Oliver, is like you enjoy music, stand-up comedy shows. That's awesome, right? Like for me, I enjoy golf, watching basketball highlights, going out for a walk or a jog or exercising or something like that, right? Just always find time for yourself. That's important. Everybody's so busy with, your career, with kids. Like for me, once the kids get out of school, it's like, man, everything's just going hectic again. You got to figure out what activity to take them to, what snack they're going to eat, what's for dinner, and all those things. But when they're away from school, I always make sure I try to find some time for myself, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour. I always try to find some time just to do something I enjoy doing. And I think that's important for your mental health. It's like you can do those things with your kids, but I think it's more satisfaction if you kind of just enjoy it by yourself. Take the time, have no distractions or commotions going on in the background, and just kind of have some time for yourself.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can't remember what book I read it in, but I read another book where it said like it's actually good to take time for yourself, like when the kids are there too, just so that they understand it's important that you have time for yourself and that it's
True.
okay to take time for yourself. And kids are, I think, I don't know, I think I do this too, but like you kind of underestimate how smart kids are and how understanding they can be. If I told my kids, like, hey, I need like 10 minutes for myself, okay? So I'm gonna maybe go for a walk or I'm just gonna be in my room. Just give me 10 minutes and I'll come back out, I'll be fine. I think something as simple as that. Um, find what you like, like what would you do all day if money wasn't an issue? Like what
Yeah.
would you what and that's kind of, if you can make money doing it, that's what you should be doing for your career, right? So like, what, and I think those things change over time. And I'm actually reading The Happiness Project right now, which is a really interesting book. It's about this woman who I think she spends like a year or something, like looking at all these different ways to kind of increase her happiness. She does all these different things. It's a really interesting read. Highly recommend it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's like a thread that connects every episode we've done, that in terms of like kind of getting outside your comfort zone. We talked about that, and there's like, I can't remember the word for it, but there's actually a word. When we talked about like habituation and being comfortable, it's actually a word, like a clinical word for that phenomena where things just kind of get stale and boring every day. So, and that can happen with kids too. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think, and then again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, if your kids aren't happy, you're not going to be happy as a parent. So it's tough, right? It's not just your own happiness. Like if you're single, it's kind of all you need. Well, I mean, you want to be a good person, but it's just your own happiness. So you have kind of, you have a little bit of control over that. But when it's your kids, it's like you kind of have to make them happy first. It feels like. Um, I mean, as a parent, that's what you're like. You take a bullet for them, right? If they're sick,
True.
you're like, I want to take your sickness, and I'll be sick, and you feel better. So I guess it starts with them, and then it comes to you. So if they're happy, then not doesn't I don't think it means you're happy. It means you can be happy. So yeah, that's kind of my takeaway, kind of from what the research says and what I've seen and kind of what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, Oliver. Like one thing that I always tell myself, which is challenging to do, is I need to be happy and healthy first before other people can be happy. But I think that's opposite of what you're trying to say in terms of being a parent, right? And I see that conflict as well. Is like there's times when my kids are sick, when they're not happy, something's going on with them. It impacts my mood. I'm trying to keep myself positive, but I can't because of the situation that I'm in. So it's just a struggle and challenge. And I think what's most important here is just how to find those outlets, how to find ways to snap out of that. Obviously, you can't just wait until your kid gets happy and things get better because you don't know when that's going to be or how long it's going to take. But just those strategies and tips on how to kind of break through that and feel better. And I think that's what we're trying to transpire here with all of our episodes and the messaging that we're trying to get across to listeners here. It's challenging, but at the end of the day, that's part of life. That's part of the journey, and it's a little bit tougher, I guess, being a parent, especially nowadays in this time and age.
Yeah, and then something else that that was mentioned in the article from the Surgeon General. I mean, financially, obviously it's harder as a parent because you're supporting children. So yeah, I mean that's a legitimate concern, like money and not being able to afford things, or um, but I think to kind of like connected to that, I mean, it's been studied and researched that experiences mean more to people, are more valuable
Hmm.
to people than possessions. So, and then when you kind of talk to your kids and you go through like their journals and like their so like at my kids' school, I just actually we had a back to school night last night, and you go there and they write you like a letter. It's really cute. They write you a letter. So you sit down at their desk, you read the letter, and then you write like a reply to them, and then they can read that the next day when they come to school. And then they write about like their favorite colors, their favorite animals, and everything like that. And you can kind of figure out like how well you know your own child. Um, so but in terms of going back to like the financial part of kind of the stress that we're all facing, for like my kids, like what's your most memorable like vacation, or what's your most memorable day, or whatever that is. It's never like the day I got my computer on Christmas, or the day I got my first bike. It's maybe the day I learned how to ride a bike, which is an
Hmm.
experience rather than the possession. But it's like it's like crazy. I mean, you think about your own childhood, like the things you remember are kind of insane. Like I remember, I think my one of my first memories is like eating like graham crackers at like preschool with like some girl like who was there, and it's like such a weird memory, but it has nothing to do with like getting something like I can't remember like if it's a gift, it's the sentiment always. It's never the gift.
Yep.
So it's not obviously there are certain things that you just can't do if you don't have enough money, but I think there's room to be creative in terms of like creating like good core memories for your kids. It can be as simple as like taking them to like the beach at sunrise or something like that, or maybe like going hiking and like seeing like a turtle in a pond or something like that simple. You just never know what it is, and that's essentially a free
Yep.
experience. So
Yep.
so yeah, I mean, it doesn't, again, you can't argue with rent being expensive and food being expensive and gas being expensive. But I think there are ways to still like find enjoyment, with your family and with your
Yep.
kids.
And that's for sure, man. Like that actually reminds me what happened like probably a few days ago, 3, 4 days ago over the weekend. My wife comes up to me at night when the kids are sleeping. She's like, "Yeah, Benjamin brought up something today. My son. Um, he's like, I kind of like daddy more. I kind of love daddy more." And my wife's kind of taken back, and she's like, "Why? What do you mean?" She's like, "No, no. Of course, I still love you, mom, the same and all that. But I just love daddy more because he always plays with me. He always goes outside and plays with me. He always, sits next to me and plays Nintendo Switch with me or whatever it may be." And that really touched me, right? Like going through all the stress, dealing with the hectic schedules and the loneliness, all the things associated with parenting and the article and the episode that we're talking about today, that made it all more enjoyable. Just that one little thing. It wasn't like, oh, daddy made X thousand of dollars or daddy bought me this for X hundred of dollars, whatever it may be. It was just like the fact that he just loves playing with him. He just loves me, by his side doing things that he enjoyed doing. And that's just priceless at the end of the day. So even though it is stressful being a parent, even though, I am part of that 48%, almost half of the number of people who took that survey who are dealing with overwhelming stress, those little things, and I think I mentioned that last week as well, is like the little things in life kind of just bring some joy back into the situation you're in. So those are things, I hope everybody kind of remembers and takes advantage of, I guess, because you don't have to pay for those things. Those things just come naturally when you least expect it, but take it and run with it and appreciate it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just kind of never know. I mean, I think kind of connected to that, I think maybe I don't know if you want to add anything else, but maybe we can close out after this.
Yeah,
But so like love language, right? I think it's really good to kind of figure out what your children's love language is,
sure.
because it's probably different than yours. So like your son Benjamin, it sounds like it's like either like physical contact or physical presence or so you got to figure. I think it's good to try to figure that out. Like, well, how do your kids like experience kind of love and trying to? Again, they're probably different. Like if you have more than one kid, so
Absolutely.
yeah, it looks like you found your son's love language. So yeah, that's great. And now you can just kind of feed into that and make sure you.
Absolutely. Totally agreed. Yeah, I think I'll just close it all. I'll just kind of repeat these 3 tips again. Hopefully you'll find, some people will find it helpful. Number 1 is just kind of start with what you know. Rekindle those old relationships and friendships that you may have because that helps with loneliness. Number 2 is kind of acknowledge the benefits of not just an online community, but a community as a whole, I guess, because that kind of you'll see that you're not the only one dealing with it. There's other people out there willing to help, willing to support you. And there's obviously a lot of people out there have it worse than you do. And the third tip really is just, find time for yourself. Um, if you enjoy comedy, music, golf, motorcycles, whatever, just find some time for yourself because that's important, especially through the hectic schedules. So, we're just hoping that these tips, the talk that we've had, some of the examples that we provided will help those who are listening. What's most important here is we just want everybody to be happy. There's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be tests and trials that's going to impact your mental health. But we're just hoping that a lot of these can all be, kind of put together and people can benefit from this.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review if you can, and please share if you can. Otherwise, yeah, well, hopefully we'll be back with a new episode next week.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of the week, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.